Welcome to Elected, a podcast for women in and around Canadian politics and our active accomplices and allies. I'm your host, Sarah Elder Chaminara from Madam Premier, and today I am joined by Alex Mitchell, the CEO of the Abbotsford Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to be having maybe a different kind of conversation today than maybe the straight up political ones. And so I'm really excited to have this discussion with you today, Alex.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we connected a while ago and I wanted to reach out because you do some really interesting things in Abbotsford. And I think as a city kind of flies under the radar most people, even in BC, because I'd say you're like a low key power player.
That's very generous. We'll take it though.
Yeah. In terms of, the economic engine that Abbotsford is for the province, and then also just kind of to raise the level of awareness around, of communities and, you with other people listening in from around the country. So why don't you tell me a little bit about Abbotsford and your work as the CEO for the chamber?
Awesome. Yeah, happy to. And first and foremost, I just want to say a big thank you for having me. And Sarah, I'm a huge fan of yours. I love the work that you do, and especially the work in elevating women's voices across Canada. So could not be more excited to have this conversation with you. And also really excited to talk about Abbotsford. So I'll start with the personal because I grew up in Abbotsford. So it's my hometown. It's the community that I called home for many, many years. I moved away for a long time and came back. And it's one of those places where there is so much under the radar, to use your words, economic activity that's happening in our city, but also in the Fraser Valley region overall. It's really an interesting place. I've spent some years in economic development at the local government level, and then now with the Chamber of Commerce. And it's pretty incredible. You have to go down to our industrial areas, and you connect with businesses that are doing manufacturing operations that are exporting globally at massive scales, and you wouldn't know that they're operating out of a small industrial location just next to the Abbotsford International Airport. But it really is incredible how much economic impact this community has, not only to the region, but to Western Canada and to Canada as a whole, be that agriculture, ag tech, aerospace, aviation, advanced manufacturing, and increasingly more of the creative industries as well. So it's an exciting place to be.
Well, and maybe I should have offered more of, I also have an interest in, because I grew up in the Fraser Valley, the area that you live in. So I was born, for anyone listening and has an inside knowledge, I was born in actually, I'm not sure if it's a town or a city anymore, but in Mission, which is a neighboring community to our city to Abbotsford. And then I spent a couple of years in Abbotsford actually as a really small child, and then did really grew up in Chilliwack. So I consider Chilliwack like my hometown. And so Chilliwack and Abbotsford are, side by side, and are rivals, I would say, in a lot of ways.
I think you'd be fair to say that in some ways. There's definitely a little bit of rivalry around, which big investment goes to which community and that sort of thing.
Right. And so my personal connection to the area and still wanting to see it thrive and to also champion it, because it is I have a bias towards the area and how beautiful it is.
Well, I love it there. We got to get you back. We got to get you back to British Columbia.
I would love that. I would love that. Although it has changed so much. I've been in Alberta now for 12 years, and I left the lower mainland in 2000, and around 2005 I moved out of Chilliwack, or Abbotsford actually. And so yeah, I've been away for a long time, but every time I do come back, the growth is absolutely stunning.
Mm-hmm.
So
incredible.
And just as a travel tip, because you mentioned the airport, and maybe people don't know that Abbotsford actually has an international airport.
We sure do. Yeah, the Abbotsford Airport's great. I mean, as somebody who loves to travel, I love being able to hop on a flight out of Abbotsford Airport. It's pretty incredible. I think for a long time, the head of WestJet used to call it the Costco of airports, which maybe doesn't sound so great, but I love it because not only do I love Costco, but it speaks to efficiency and
Yes.
a really great, easy travel experience.
Yeah.
So it's great for travelers, but it's also, I mean, I would be remiss without mentioning how much of an economic generator the Abbotsford Airport is for the entire Metro Vancouver region. It is that secondary airport to Vancouver. So
Yeah. And if you ever want to skip the lines of Vancouver,
come over to
um,
Abbotsford.
go to Abbotsford. But in and around you mentioned also in and around the airport, there's so much aerospace and aviation development and investment going on.
Mhm.
You're also home to the Abbotsford Air Show, which is an annual event for like anyone who geeks out in the aviation world. But on the ag, I think what's really interesting, well, because my heart also lies in agriculture. But on the ag cap, you're the well, and I have a hard time saying this coming from Chilliwack, but you are the agricultural capital of Canada, as it says on your website. So, what are the primary agricultural industries of Abbotsford?
Yeah, well, I love talking about agriculture because it really is fundamental to who we are in this community and our local economy. But yes, we are the agriculture capital of Canada, highest gross farm receipts in the country. The next most productive agricultural region is the Niagara region out of Ontario, and it lags far behind. Right, in reference to what's grown here in the Fraser
Right.
Valley. And so in Abbotsford, you see everything from dairy, poultry to berries. Berries are a
Yes.
massive export product, and yeah, it is a key economic generator. We're talking $3.8 billion in economic activity every single year, just within the city of Abbotsford alone, and about a fifth of local employment is related to that industry. So there's really a lot there. But increasingly, the way that people do farming continues to change and become, it was interesting. We had Stan Vanderwall, he was chair of the BC Agriculture Council. He was speaking at one of our events a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how people need to understand that agriculture is an innovation industry.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important to keep in mind in that modernization of farming has been occurring for a long time, but it's becoming a tech heavy way of doing farming. And so we all have a connection to farming. We all eat food. But with that, there's so much more opportunity for the industry to grow and to change. And that presents challenges as well. So one of the things that we continue to advocate for at the Abbotsford Chamber, and then as a Fraser Valley region, is we keep talking about land being in short supply. Industrial land is in short supply, but then also when we talk about our rich agricultural land, some of the most productive ag land in the country, we have some challenges around our farmers being able to process food on the next to where they're producing it. Because we're constricted by something called the Agricultural Land Reserve, came
Yes.
about in the 1970s. I'm just going on and on nerding out about it, but the ALR is that vehicle that was meant to preserve farmland, but it hasn't adapted a lot to meet the needs of ag tech and of innovating farmers today. So we want to see some changes there.
Well, I mean, so I'll share that. So my first staffer job in the BC legislature, and my dream job in politics was actually working for the many former now ministers of agriculture.
Nice.
Yes. So for a former 4-H kid who grew up in Chilliwack, it was like, I had stars in my eyes every day because you talk about supply management or like, any of the commodities or, the ALR, and it's overseen by something called the Agricultural Land Commission,
Mhm.
which is the body that decides, for example, if someone could build, for example, on their land within the ALR, right? So they have to go through the application process,
Yeah.
um, and for anyone who is familiar with the Fraser Valley and the Lower Mainland in general, you would know that there's like a very quickly growing population.
Mhm.
And for homes too in your region is off the charts probably.
Yeah.
So the constraints on building, but also maintaining and protecting that farmland is really it's a balance, right?
It's such a balance. I mean, yeah, you have so many new people that are trying to move to our communities, and people need homes. We need to preserve agricultural land for our food security, and then we also
Exactly.
need food processing capacity for
Yeah.
businesses. And so you have to weigh out all of these things. You have to think about land speculation, land
Mhm.
availability, and it's really, really hard. I mean, this is where the politics gets into all of it, but it's really, really hard, I think, for our decision makers today to have that long-term view into how they implement the kinds of policies that are going to serve our community members for generations to come because of all of these conflicting needs.
Well, and on, climate change, right? Drought, fire, and in your part of British Columbia, floods as
Yeah.
well is a very real. It was only how many years ago there actually was a really devastating flood. Uh,
2021 in November. We remember it. We remember it well here, and it's something that maybe I'll share this. Because since you've brought up flooding, it's something that we're very, very passionate about taking action on, and passionate about there needing to be some solutions for. But our community found out just I believe last week that all of the application that was made to the federal government for flood infrastructure funding was completely denied.
really?
Yeah, and it's I think our mayor called it just completely ridiculous and being left out in the cold. But after one of the biggest natural disasters in Western Canada that caused millions of dollars in economic impact, displacement of people, the death of a lot of livestock,
Yeah.
and also on the economic side, a prolonged closure of Highway 1 where we weren't able to bring goods to market to the largest port in Canada, the Port of Metro
Well,
Vancouver.
it even kept goods from reaching Alberta, as a province on
Exactly.
the other side of the border. Also, you border Abbotsford falls along the American border.
Mhm. This
Um,
region is so important, and
yeah,
so we're at this place now where we're looking to the federal government, thinking if anything meets the bar for federal intervention and investment in infrastructure, the flood certainly meets that. And right now there's no plan around how to fund that critical need for upgrades to diking, and long-term prevention. And then we think about climate change, and
right.
and I like to remind our decision makers, especially at the federal level, like if you care about climate change, then put your money where our farms are, where our food is being produced sustainably,
Mhm.
because that's what will give us what we need in the long term to support Canadians. So that's a really, really challenging one for us right now, is just having no certainty around what the future looks like in terms of flood mitigation infrastructure.
Well, I'm really glad you shared that because I hadn't seen that in the news. And that's something really important, I think, to flag. Just to have in my backup pocket of knowledge as well. And yeah, that's really interesting. I can't believe that they would completely reject the application, but I mean that's where the advocacy and your role as an independent, nonpartisan organization really comes into play. Like your job as a chamber is to work with whoever's in government, right? To advocate for the best interests of your
Exactly.
community.
You've said that brilliantly. That's exactly what we do. And this is what I always like to, remind our members, and also, any and all business owners. I mean, chambers of commerce are different across Canada. We all do a variety of different things in our communities, but advocacy is pretty core to what we do.
Mhm.
And at times when, you know, it may be hard for a particular business to step out and raise their voice to government at any level about some of the
Right.
challenges that they're facing. Like
Mhm.
that's where the chambers help to be able to speak with that united voice and make sure that their voices are heard at every single level of government, and that we can actually move the needles on to move the needle on some of the issues that matter.
Yeah. In terms of, and I mean, that's a really, really important thing because I think, as a small business owner myself, um, sometimes smaller, on the small side of the business environment, it's easy to feel sometimes like well, and it's very true, overwhelmed by the daily realities of managing your business,
Yeah.
right? And like in this economic climate, with the increased cost of everything, and that's something that we all face as individuals as well. Um, but I would imagine like you advocate for the smallest and the largest.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say in many ways, our sweet spot really is working with the smallest businesses, right? The ones that they're the ones that really do need the additional support. And so sometimes, there's the advocacy piece, but then there's also all of the other work that you do around providing resources and workshops and trainings and programming that's relevant to the community because yeah, like you're in the thick of it. There's only so much capacity to take on more, and costs do keep rising. Like there's an affordability crisis for people in BC overall, just the cost of living. There's an affordability crisis for business owners.
Yeah, there definitely is. And it's something that unfortunately isn't discussed. But we see that I think the impact of that every day when you hear, yet another small business,
Yeah.
even larger businesses deciding to close their doors because they can't afford the cost of operating a bricks and mortar location. It's a struggle even for myself.
Yeah.
And then you see people moving back to the online environment and then eventually just folding.
Mhm.
It's just simply being online isn't sustainable and the cost of that. And it's a pay to play environment. It's a really complicated time and complicated environment. But
Yeah.
I also know that the chamber, you have a women's leadership council. So how does that tie into the advocacy and how do you specifically advocate for women in business in Abbotsford?
Ah, so our Women's Leadership Council is a new initiative. It's just started, and so we're really excited about that. And we decided to launch this because here's the thing: there are a lot of organizations out there that have programming for women, geared to women, that's not new. But in our community, we felt that there was a real opportunity to bring our advocacy focus to this work. So we've got an amazing chair from the aerospace sector. She'll be leading this work, and it'll be a council of leaders who are female identifying from all sectors of the community and all industries. There'll be some nonprofit backgrounds as well, and they'll be developing some of the programming that they think is going to help our business community continue to be employers of choice, how they can better adapt the way they do business to be more inclusive. But then also they will do advocacy. They will, there's a number of policy positions that they'll be taking, pushing out different content pieces, engaging a lot at the local level around, how zoning impacts women. There's new changes to zoning that impact childcare locations. So that'll be something that they're talking about. So there's a lot there. We're really excited about that work. But it also just builds on work that we've been doing for a long time to address inclusion. We have a company of young professionals and entrepreneurs that started a few years ago. And that really is about supporting the next generation of business leaders so that they can actually see themselves in this community, and they think of Abbotsford as a place where they want to start their business. They want to start their next venture instead of leaving to another urban center to try something new and to make their investments. So yeah, it's exciting.
How will you tie in the awareness of what's happening on the Women's Leadership Council with your broader membership so that they better understand the needs of women in the entrepreneurial community in Abbotsford? Because I
Yeah.
think there's a large gap around, we end up having a lot of conversations in like within
Mhm.
with ourselves, with women in general, as anyone who identifies as women. But how do we like in that allyship component of things? because there's a lot of, we'll commiserate and say, we understand the issues, woman to woman. But then, how do we bring men along and so that they can be our allies in the business world as well?
Absolutely. I love that question. And I think that's where there's so much need for more integration between all of the programming that happens in these groups with
Mhm.
our broader membership. But we really learned a lot from our company young professionals program because it's been around for a while now. And it's always so encouraging because anytime we host events that are geared to that cohort, I'm amazed by who else shows up just to listen and to
Okay,
learn.
that's great.
And we've had our mayor and council show up to many of those, but people that are not in that age demographic that show up because they wanna better understand the people that they might be hiring, and really dig deep into knowing that demographic better. And
Mhm.
so we want to create some opportunities for that to be possible as well with the Women's Leadership Council too. So again, creating those intersections along the way. Your question also makes me think though about the broader challenge of echo chambers that we live in, and I was at an incredible business community event in Vancouver just this week, and it's really interesting because you go into a room of people and you go, wow, there's a lot of like-minded voices here, and we all have a similar view about some of the changes that we think need to be made to the regulatory system, and we're really, really going in the same direction with our advocacy asks,
Mhm.
and I always like to remind myself who's not in the room and what other people
Exactly.
we missed, because it's all well and good to go out and say, there's a united business community, this is the vision, but has it really captured the realities of where people are at? And that's informing a lot of the work that we're doing with something. It's again another new initiative, but it's something called the Fraser Valley Business Coalition. So we felt there was really great alignment between our four Fraser Valley chambers, so Langley, Abbotsford, Mission, and Chilliwack. We all have a lot of similar issues that we care about that are relevant to our members, and we've been working together for a long time. But this spring, we thought this is the time to actually come together and come out with our objectives on behalf of our members that we want to present to anyone who is running for provincial office in our region. These are the regional issues that matter.
And there's
But
an upcoming provincial election, so your
yeah,
time
there
is
there is.
excellent.
And and this was the thing. We didn't want to just go out saying these are the four big ideas that we know matter to businesses. Like we know what those business issues are, but we actually went out and conducted public opinion research and connected with our community members. Is our community at the same place that our business members are at? Like
Mhm.
what are the salient things that actually matter to everybody that we can be united on? Because there's nothing wrong with coming out with a united voice, but it's got to be true to where people are really at. So we wanted to do that work, and we came up with our four big ideas that we wanted to prioritize, and that allowed us to. We did a big economic summit, had the premier out a little while ago, but it really was about setting the agenda for the issues that matter most, and then being able to say, listen, if you're going to put your name forward, these are the things that you have to pay attention to in the communities that you say you want to represent. So where do you stand on these issues? And if you don't support these things, why or why not? So that at least we're able to equip our broader community with a little more information so they can make informed decisions this fall.
Great. So what are the four priorities that were identified?
So first is addressing the infrastructure deficit. So we've already talked about flood mitigation infrastructure
Yeah.
being one, but others would be transportation and transit infrastructure. Um,
20, like expanding Highway 1 through.
Expanding Highway 1, that
Yeah.
is a big one. We don't like to see people and products just sitting there on that highway for hours on end. So
Yeah.
long overdue, needs to happen, but also transit infrastructure that connects communities, especially with our region being one of the fastest growing in Canada. The other one is around agriculture, ag tech, and food security. So, how do we modernize the ALR? We're proposing actually creating an agri-industrial land use. It's
Okay.
not idea. It was originally proposed by the Food Security Task Force a couple of years ago. And it's basically the idea that we could take unproductive ALR land. There's some land in there that has poor quality soil, that's not actually good for growing food. We could turn that, and it's actually a very, very small portion. They say up to 0.225% of the ALR is that poor soil quality. We could turn that into agri-industrial to allow for food processing and keep us competitive. Again, I'm talking to a lovely person in Alberta. So a lot of investment and a lot of young people moving to Alberta.
Yes.
So that's one piece. The other is around empowering a workforce of the future. And so we have an amazing academic institution in our community, the University of the Fraser Valley. We believe that they need to become what's called a comprehensive university. They haven't seen a change to their funding model in decades, and classes are in demand. Our businesses need that young talent to come out of post-secondary with the right kind of training. So we're really pushing for more investments into our post-secondary ecosystem in the valley. There's also issues around crime and vandalism, not unique to our communities, but we need some broader policy solutions to deal with those. And I think I just ran through our four.
Well, I wholeheartedly support all of those, having grown up in the area. I can understand and would agree completely with all of them. They all make perfect sense. And to be honest, because Abbotsford, but BC is going into a provincial election. If someone wasn't on board with any of those, I would honestly say that they're out of step with the needs of the region. And I'd love to know why they wouldn't be on board with those priorities, because you don't need to spend much time in Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Langley, or Mission to understand any of those issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you'd be surprised. There's
well, aren't we
always
always
some
surprised?
confused, but
Aren't we always surprised sometimes by the political things that happen? But I mean, that's really great. And I love to hear about the collaboration in the Fraser Valley region, because it's such a powerhouse. And I think a lot of people, visitors, or the awareness of, Vancouver is a city, Richmond actually is the home of Vancouver International Airport. People are familiar with Richmond, Vancouver. Surrey is, if not actually, I think maybe they are the fastest growing municipality in Canada.
Yeah.
But then you're right, just down the road. And so, the economic growth that's happening there, the population, it's such a family friendly and family oriented community. There's just so much going on. And maybe someone listening to this will consider moving there, because I would love to move back, to be honest.
You're welcome anytime.
Well, thank you. I would love to come back. I would also love, when I come drive from Alberta, to see an expansion of Highway 1.
This is the thing. Like, there's so much economic activity that's happening in the region, but we are not insulated from the broader issues that are happening in the rest of the province. And we look at some of those challenges with young talent leaving British Columbia to look for opportunities elsewhere, cost of living being a big driver of that.
Yeah.
And again, infrastructure not keeping up, being a big constraint to growth. And so, yeah, if our communities are going to thrive, we need to make sure that there's that awareness at the provincial level, and the federal level too, that our communities out here really, really do matter.
Yeah. Do you happen to have an elevator pitch that you make to anyone considering moving their business or their family to Abbotsford?
Well, I always talk about access to talent, quality of life, being pretty incredible out here, and diversity of industry. There really is. I mean, we've talked a lot about agriculture, but there is
Yeah,
diversification.
there is a lot more.
Yeah, which again has kept our community really economically solid in tough times. So that's it's a resilient place. So when you hear economic development pitches, people always say those things. They talk about quality of life and all of that. But I would actually go a little bit more to the personal, and I think about 2021 during the floods, and how our community showed up to support each other. And it's truly inspiring. There are many people today that are still waiting for uh, for government assistance. They're still waiting to rebuild. But our business community and our residents came together almost instantaneously after those devastating floods hit. There's something called the Abbotsford Disaster Relief Fund, handed out millions of dollars in grants from people, from individual businesses, directly to affected people, while also being out on the front lines sandbagging, to protect infrastructure, to protect homes. And I think so when you talk about the elevator pitch for our community, I think stuff like that speaks to who we are. This is a place of people who step up to support each other, to stand for their local businesses, to stand for their farmers, and a place where diversity really matters. And if you are part of this community, you've got that support. So I think that part is really unique, and makes me very proud to be from here.
That's amazing. Well, I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. And I hope that, we've raised the level of awareness of Abbotsford, the work of your chamber, but also, chambers more broadly. And also for anyone listening who, hasn't had an understanding of what the work is that you do and why it's so vitally important. Um, it really matters. So
Yeah.
um, there's a lot of opportunity.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. And if there's anyone, if any of your listeners want to connect more with our organization, or learn more about the chamber, we have open doors. So don't hesitate to reach out. But appreciate the chance to get to speak about our community.
Yeah, well, that's some true Fraser Valley hospitality right there. Okay, thank
Always,
you so
always.
much, Alex.
Thanks, Sarah.